We can close our books for a few minutes. So I have a question. This is not a rhetorical question, which means you have to answer it. Who here would say that they are perfectionists? Don't be shy. Okay, good. All right. How do you define being perfect? Anyone? Yeah, Zoe? Yeah, you want to make sure everything is correct and everything has to be exactly the want to be. Shoshana?
Obsessing over the little details that no one but you is going to ever notice and changing it 1,000 times even if it was good the first time and generally spending too much time on it.
It's very good. Obsessing over the little details and going over and over and over them, and then all the details that nobody's even going to notice. Very good. I shortened it a little bit. Yes? Feeling a lot of anxiety. Aviva's anxiety too here.
I was just going to say, the New Yorker had a big expose on perfectionism, that is what it leads to depression and anxiety. And speaking as one who is a perfectionist, I'll give a second.
Boy, it's tough. By the way, how many of you who raised your hand before wishes that you weren't a perfectionist? Yeah, it's hard sometimes, like you say. It's hard, like it's something to bear. It's tough. So I want to look at today's portion. I want to look at a little bit about perfection. So let's explore a bit. Zoe has told us this is the first portion of the entire Torah. And we have creation, talk about the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve. There's more. There's the Tower of Babel. There's Cain and Abel. That's not a great one. But what happens in this portion? Well, from nothing comes something. And light suffuses the darkness, and stars and oceans are formed. And as we get later in creation, we have peonies and penguins coming into being. And everything is Tov. You know what Tov is? Yeah, but that wasn't Tov enough. Tov is good. Like capital G, the definition of good. Tov. Everything is Tov. And then the climax of creation, if you will, the sixth day, humans appear. And they are... Oh, I saw some thumbs down. No, not in the text. I'm not asking for your opinion on humans. I'm saying, what does the text say? The text says we are very good. Tov me'od. Very Tov. Very Tov. And then Vayechulu, which is what Zoe read in the 7th Aliyah, God finishes, ceases all labor. You can almost visualize the satisfaction on God's face. Can you imagine just stepping back and looking? You know, I've seen wonderful analogies of Shabbat being that time when, like, if you're an artist, you know, you make your painting. Shabbat's a day when you take a step back and you look at the whole canvas and say, that's the picture. So you imagine, God's having a good time up there. It's perfect. Everything's perfect. And then the thumbs down comes into play. Everything turns. Adam and Eve eat the fruit. Worse, their son, Cain, kills their other son, Abel. Things have gone wrong. And suddenly this perfect world is not so perfect. And at the end of the portion, this is the maftir that you read, Zoe. The last part of the portion is Genesis 6. And it says, God saw how great were the humans' wickedness on earth, how every plan devised by their minds was nothing but evil. Woo! Wow. All the time. That's a lot. And then it says something remarkable. It says, God says, Nichamti. I regret this. Some say it's a comfort. I like to read it as I regret. God regrets that God had made humans. And God's heart was saddened. And God says, I will blot out from the earth the people I created, together with beasts, creeping things, and birds of the sky, for I regret that I made them. Rashi tells us, Rashi, the great commentator from the 11th century, says this is the moment when God turns back from divine mercy to divine justice. The order must be restored. I'm going to find out next week what happens at your bat mitzvah, Hope, when the flood comes and God goes through with the plan. It feels like God's not that perfect here. By the way, I say that thinking of Ruth Shapiro of blessed memory. Ruth was all of our teacher, and Ruth ran the school for years and taught so many people here. And Ruth would always take God's side, you know. She would say, you're wrong. God is perfect. And you know what? Maybe she's right. Maybe she's right. Maybe the problem isn't that God isn't perfect. Maybe the problem is we define perfect the wrong way. You know, we have a certain, I asked you what perfect was, and you gave me good definitions of it. Maybe God is perfect. Maybe perfection and flawlessness are different. People have flaws. Maybe God had a flaw here. Didn't understand how free will could be so powerful. But in next week's portion, we'll also see that God learned, hey, people are evil from their youth. I get it. I'm not going to destroy them again. There's a learning God going on here. So what if perfection, let's take it out of the God realm for a minute. What if perfection included failures, messing up, but then correcting? What if we learn as God learns, which is what we do? It's what we need to do. A few years ago, we were studying this story in an adult class, and it was really amazing because, you always think of perfect as being the ideal, right? We reach for the perfection. And people in the class were saying, perfection's really a negative. It's stagnancy. You just don't go anywhere. You don't have anything to strive for. It's like the end of the line. What happens if you make perfection? Well, that's kind of it. One person actually pointed out that in the Torah and in all our liturgy, God never commands us to be perfect. God commands us to be holy. Holy. God asks our actions to be holy, to be elevated, to be emulating God, but not to be God. We emulate the things of God. And I'll tell you also, I mentioned Ruth before. Ruth Shapiro would always say, when she would see kids being hard on themselves, and she'd say to them, only God is perfect. Only God is perfect. The message, of course, was don't be so hard on yourself. Takes the pressure off you. Forgive your own mistakes. We all make them. That's part of who we are, and it's part of our perfection as well. If you don't make the mistakes and you think that you're closer to perfection, you kind of run afoul of the rabbinic tradition. Our rabbinic tradition says, hey, you're better when you've done bad things and you've gotten better. When you made teshuvah, which was repentance, return. We just had the high holidays where that's our message. We make teshuvah. The rabbis say it's better the person who sins and repents than the person who never sins at all. Okay? That's who we are. That's who we are. Whenever I start with my students, I say, what are you most worried about? What gives you your nervousness? And they say, what are the two words you all say? Messing up. Messing up. How many people said that? Yes. Yeah. Messing up. All right. Messing up is not mispronouncing a word. Messing up is not singing the wrong way. Messing up is not forgetting the tune altogether. That's making mistakes. Happens all the time. And I can tell you that after the B'nai Mitzvah, we look back at this. I've been here for 20-something years, 23 years, right? This is, I don't know, first of all, this is the first bat mitzvah I've ever done of Zoe, okay? But I've done a few others, over 500. And Rabbi's done over 1,000. I mean, we've done a lot of B'nai Mitzvah. And every single time we get together, usually at Kiddush, we say, that was perfect. That was perfect. The kids always say that, have all the trope right? No. Do I always have the trope right? No. No. It's really an incredible thing. And you think, wow, oh, I messed up. I missed this. I didn't do this. I didn't do this. It was perfect, no matter what. It's perfect, but we knew that. Yeah, exactly. So I want to look at perfection one more time. What's the perfect place? Yeah, the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden. We read about the Garden of Eden. That is the perfect place. It's paradise. Last week at Theo's bar mitzvah, Rabbi Ezra told a very sweet story about a rabbi and a prince pretending to be roosters, which I'm not going to tell again. It's a great story. Just look up Rabbi Prince Rooster, okay? And he gave a sermon because that was about being created in God's image. And he really drew quite a bit from Rabbi Ed Feinstein. Now, Rabbi Ed Feinstein is in LA. He's at Valley Beth Shalom. He's an amazing guy. He has a wonderful storybook here called Capturing the Moon. I recommend this. It's not just for kids, although it's great for kids. But the lessons here are fantastic. And I tend to tell these stories over and over again because they really affect me. And there's one story in particular called Paradise, which I want to read a little bit from in a minute. By the way, Ed Feinstein, Rabbi Feinstein, was one of the people who got Camp Ramat Galim going, okay? He was on the board, he pushed it. And one of the things that he said was the beautiful thing about Jewish summer camp is it gives you passion. You know, sometimes Judaism's about, we look at it and we're like, it's intellectual, we got to know the words, you know, and we got to, whatever. Some people might find services boring at times, which I don't understand, of course, but it's passion. You have young people create an entire Jewish world, and there's passion behind it. I'm not sure it's paradise, at least the mac and cheese might not be paradise, you know. I went to Camp Ramah myself for many years in New York, and nobody would think Wingdale, New York is the Garden of Eden, let me tell you. But I wouldn't be up here for Warren for Jewish Summer Camp. So that was a little commercial, all right? I'll plug the book and I'll plug the camps. But it's all based around Rabbi Ed. So I want to tell this story. The story is called Paradise. And the story goes, I'll abridge it a bit, from the day they were exiled from the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve tilled the soil, they raised their children, they worked hard, they faced challenges, they had a difficult life. They were no longer in the garden. And one day, kind of like they retired, you know, so one day they went on a walkabout. They wanted to see the world. And they went to the oceans, the vast, infinite oceans, and they saw the magnificent mountains. They saw the forests. They saw the vast desert. They saw all these amazing things. And then, you know, because they're walking everywhere, they wound up outside a place that looked kind of familiar. And it was the Garden of Eden. And outside the Garden of Eden, the angel with the sword, the flaming sword, thank you, the flaming sword, guarding the garden, not allowing them back in. But just then a voice, it's God. And God says, your punishment is complete, come home. And the angel and the sword disappeared. And Adam thought for a minute, and then he says to God, it's been a while, tell me what it's like in there. And God says, the garden is paradise. There's no work, you won't struggle, you won't toil, there's no pain, there's no suffering, there's no death, there's no time, there's no yesterday, tomorrow, only today. And it's just an everlasting today. And so Adam and Eve are offered a return to paradise, the perfect place. Now, if you got that offer, what would you do? You'd say yes. What a great place. You'd say yes. That is not exactly what happened. I'm going to read this. This, by the way, always affects me. It always affects me, and I've read it a lot of times. Adam considered God's words. He thought about a life with no work, no struggle, no pain, no passage of time, and no death. An endless life of ease with no tomorrow and no yesterday. And then he turned and looked at Eve, his wife. He looked into the face of the woman with whom he'd struggled to make a life, to take bread from the earth, to raise children, to build a home. He read in the lines of her face all the tragedies they had overcome, all the joys they had cherished. He saw in her eyes all the laughter and all the tears they had shared. Eve looked back into Adam's face. She saw in his face all the moments that had formed their lives, moments of jubilant celebration, moments of unbearable pain. She remembered the moments of life-changing crisis and the many moments of simple tenderness and love. She remembered the moments when a new life arrived in their world and the moments when death intruded. As all their shared moments came back to her, she took Adam's hand in hers. Looking into his wife's eyes, Adam shook his head and responded to God's invitation. No, thank you. That's not for us. We don't need that now. Come on, Eve. Let's go home. And Adam and Eve turned their backs on God's paradise and walked home. Paradise is not perfection per se. We get through our speed bumps in life. That's our paradise, is living this life. We accept our flaws, we make mistakes, we learn from our mistakes. We live a life. We have pain, we have joy. It's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. So Zoe, Rabbi always tells the kids that they've inspired his sermon, and they do. And you inspired me completely on this. I know that sometimes perfection is something you're looking for, and sometimes it grips you. And like I said before, be gentle on yourself. And I frequently tell people when they see bat mitzvah, a lot of people know Zoe and the Melons, and you know who she is, and you see like her work on all this. But a lot of people come to bat mitzvah or bar mitzvah and only see the day. Sometimes they say it's like that little iceberg, and there's so much underneath. You don't see the hours of study and learning and frustration and joy at learning. That's all there. It's an amazing thing. So Zoe, once again, I give you my blessing, which is a blessing of finding your own perfection, which is your own unique perfection. And I hope that everyone here looks for their perfection as well. Shabbat Shalom. I am going to take Zoe away for a few minutes. So we have another service, the Power Hour, which is quite a lot of fun. Zoe is going to go read a little Torah there. The people there will get to greet her. We will come back so we can enjoy, which we all look forward to. So we will be gone for a few minutes. Cantor Barbara will lead in Musaf.
Yes, Bill. Thank you for sharing that teaching. Do you need this to go with you?
Oh, yeah, I probably need that. Remember, I'm doing this again.
La, 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 la. Page 184. La, la, la.